great talent wins games, great stories win hearts. What if the Premier League's most loyal striker, released as a boy, reborn at Tottenham, and feared across England, became its crownless king? From Arsenal's reject to record-breaking number 9, Harry Kane's story asks a simple question. Is loyalty a virtue or a price no trophy can repay? He is the boy Arsenal once rejected, the loanee many clubs dismissed as not good enough, and yet the man who became the Premier League's second highest scorer of all time. Harry Kane's journey is not just about goals. It is about defying every label, every doubt, every door slammed in his face. For over a decade at Tottenham Hotspur, Kane stood as the embodiment of loyalty in a league built on transfers and instant success. Week after week, season after season, he carried Spurs on his shoulders, delivering goals by the hundreds. Golden boots lined his cabinet, England's captaincy rested on his arm, and records crumbled at his feet. And yet, there was always something missing. No Premier League title, no Champions League crown. For all his brilliance, Kane's hands remained empty of the trophies that define legacies. That is the paradox of Harry Kane, a striker feared by every defender, adored by fans, and respected across the game, but who left England without lifting the prize he longed for most. His story is a question that haunts football itself. Would you rather be remembered for loyalty or for glory? And that is where this untold story begins. The rise, the heartbreak, and the enduring legacy of Harry Kane, the crownless king of the Premier League.
Harry Edward Kane was born on July 28, 1993 in Walthamstow, East London, a working-class suburb just a few miles away from White Hart Lane, the spiritual home of Tottenham Hotspur. His parents, Kim and Patrick Kane, weren't football royalty. They were ordinary Londoners, but like many families in the capital, football ran through their veins. From a young age, Kane kicked balls around local parks, often alongside his older brother Charlie, and it became clear that the sport wasn't just a pastime, it was his identity. Kane grew up idolizing Teddy Sheringham, a Tottenham legend known for his intelligence, positioning, and ability to link play. Unlike the flashier strikers of his era, Sheringham was cerebral, subtle, and efficient. Kane didn't just admire him, he studied him. And that detail mattered, because as a child, Kane was not blessed with electric pace, outrageous skills, or the physical dominance that makes scouts turn their heads. He was different, slower, less graceful, and, in the eyes of many, less promising. At just 8 years old, Kane joined Arsenal's youth academy. For a boy from Walthamstow, it was both a dream and a challenge. But within a season, Arsenal released him, labeling him as a player without enough potential. That rejection could have ended his ambitions. For many children, it would have. Instead, it fueled him. Kane bounced back, trialing with Watford before eventually finding a home at Tottenham's academy. At Spurs, he wasn't the star boy. Coaches saw effort, determination, and a sharp instinct in front of goal, but he still lacked the natural flair others possessed. What made Kane stand out was something invisible, a relentless hunger to prove doubters wrong, and to transform his supposed weaknesses into strengths. This was the foundation of Harry Kane's story, a boy shaped not by privilege or early fame, but by rejection, resilience, and the sheer will to make it.
Harry Kane's climb from Tottenham's academy hopeful to first-team contender was anything but straightforward. Unlike the prodigies who burst onto the scene as teenagers, Kane's path was littered with doubts, setbacks, and endless loan spells. Spurs, uncertain of his readiness, sent him out to prove himself in the unforgiving lower tiers of English football. His first taste came at Leyton Orient in 2011, where he was still wiry and raw. Kane's finishing instinct flickered in flashes, but no one watching thought they were witnessing the birth of a superstar. Millwall followed in 2012, a loan spell that toughened him. In the championship, Kane found himself in a league of bruising defenders and relentless fixtures. There, he learned how to hold his ground, sharpen his movement, and match the physicality of senior football. Millwall fans respected his effort, and he later credited that time as a turning point where the boy became a man. Yet doubts persisted. Further loans to Norwich City and Leicester City saw only modest returns. At Leicester, he played alongside a squad that would later shock the world by winning the Premier League. But in 2013-14, Kane was just another struggling loanee, trying to carve out minutes and fighting whispers that he lacked the pace or flair to succeed at the top. Tottenham managers, too, were hesitant. Andre Villas-Boas and Tim Sherwood handed him sporadic opportunities, but Kane remained behind established forwards like Jermaine Defoe, Emmanuel Adebayor, and Roberto Soldado. To many fans, he was simply a squad player, destined to drift into the footballing wilderness like countless academy graduates before him. But Kane refused to let the narrative define him. He dedicated himself to the smallest details, finishing drills after training, studying movement patterns, even working on his physique to add the strength he had once lacked. Those around him, coaches, teammates, even opponents, began to note his quiet obsession with improvement. The breakthrough came with the arrival of Pochettino in 2014. Unlike others, Pochettino saw not what Kane lacked, but what he offered: intelligence, composure, and almost clinical consistency in front of the goal. It was under Pochettino's trust that Kane began to transform from an overlooked loanee into Tottenham's great hope. And then came the night when everything changed. Europa League, White Hart Lane, a chance from the bench, and a goal that would set him on a path no one could ignore.
The 2014-15 season was the moment Harry Kane shattered every doubt and forced the world to take notice. Under Mauricio Pochettino, Tottenham were in transition, rebuilding with youth and intensity. Few would have predicted that the club's academy product, once dismissed as too slow, too ordinary, would become the centerpiece of this new era. Kane's breakthrough began quietly in the Europa League, where he found the net with the kind of instinctive finishing that would soon become his hallmark. But it was in the Premier League that his rise turned into a phenomenon. In November 2014, he scored twice against Chelsea in a 5-3 New Year's Day thriller at White Hart Lane, bullying John Terry and Gary Cahill with a mixture of strength, sharp turns, and ruthless accuracy. Suddenly, Kane wasn't just one of our own, he was a force capable of dismantling the champions-elect. From that moment, the floodgates opened. Kane finished the season with 21 league goals, becoming the first Spurs player since Gareth Bale to surpass the 20-goal mark in a campaign. His scoring spree included a brace against Arsenal in the North London derby, a game where he soared above the Gunners' defense to head home a late winner, an image that instantly etched him into Spurs folklore. For a boy once rejected by Arsenal, it was poetic justice in its purest form. The media dubbed him the Hurricane, a storm sweeping through the league. Fans embraced him not just for his goals, but for his story. A local lad who embodied loyalty and grit, proving that hard work could triumph over talent alone. By April, Kane was named the PFA Young Player of the Year, cementing his place among the league's brightest prospects. But this was more than just numbers on a stat sheet. Kane's style of play revealed the depth of his transformation. He wasn't the traditional poacher waiting for scraps. He dropped deep, linked play, and unleashed passes that split defenses. He could score with either foot, dominate in the air, and outthink defenders with subtle movement. What once seemed like limitations, his lack of pace, his understated style, had become irrelevant in the face of his all-round mastery. That first season at the top wasn't just a breakout, it was a statement. Harry Kane had arrived, and he wasn't going anywhere. The Premier League had a new star, Tottenham had found their talisman, and the boy once discarded had become the league's most unlikely phenomenon. By the time the 2015-16 season began, Harry Kane was no longer a surprise package. He was the man every defense feared. What started as a fairy tale breakthrough now matured into sustained dominance. Season after season, Kane not only matched expectations, he raised them, carving his name into the Premier League's history books with relentless precision. In 2016, he claimed his first Premier League Golden Boot with 25 goals. Many thought it might be a one-off, a purple patch that would fade. Instead, Kane doubled down. In 2016-17, he hit 29 goals in just 30 appearances, firing Spurs to a second-place finish, their best in the Premier League era. He followed that with another Golden Boot in 2017-18, scoring 30 league goals, a tally that only Alan Shearer, Cristiano Ronaldo, and Luis Suarez had reached before him. Kane was now being spoken of in the same breath as the greatest strikers to ever grace the English game. What set Kane apart wasn't just his finishing, but his evolution into a complete forward. Under Pochettino and later Jose Mourinho, Kane added new dimensions to his game. He dropped deep into midfield, threading long passes with the accuracy of a playmaker. His partnership with Son Heung-min became one of the deadliest duos in Premier League history, combining for over 40 goals together in a single season, breaking records once thought unassailable. Kane wasn't simply scoring, he was orchestrating, dictating, and redefining the role of a number 9. And then there were the moments, the thunderous volley against Arsenal, the ice-cold penalties under pressure, the instinctive one-touch finishes that left goalkeepers rooted. Time and again, Kane delivered in the biggest games. North London derbies, clashes against Manchester City, Chelsea, Liverpool. Even when Spurs as a team faltered, Kane's consistency never wavered. He became the league's ultimate guarantee. If he was on the pitch, he would score. Recognition followed. Kane was named England captain in 2017, a role he embraced with quiet authority. At the 2018 World Cup, he won the Golden Boot with 6 goals, leading England to their first semi-final since 1990. For a player once deemed too slow, too average, Kane was now the face of English football on the world stage. But behind the accolades, an uncomfortable truth lingered. Spurs, for all Kane's brilliance, remained trophyless. In 2019, they reached the Champions League final against Liverpool, a night that promised to redefine Kane's legacy. Yet nursing an ankle injury, he struggled to influence the match and Spurs fell 2-0. It was a bitter reminder that football's ultimate prizes are not awarded for individual brilliance alone. Still, Kane's numbers spoke volumes. By 2021, he had surpassed 20 goals in 5 different Premier League seasons, racking up Golden Boots, Playmaker awards, and climbing the all-time scoring charts. Only Alan Shearer stood ahead of him in the league's history. Kane was no longer chasing respect, he was chasing immortality. And yet, the paradox deepened. He was the model professional, adored by Spurs fans and respected even by rivals, but his trophy cabinet remained bare. This contradiction became the defining tension of his career. How could a striker of such greatness have so little silverware to show for it? Midway through his peak, the question became unavoidable. Was loyalty to Tottenham, the club that nurtured him, worth the sacrifice of glory? Could greatness exist without the gleam of medals? For Kane, the years ahead would force him to confront those questions that would shape not just his career, but his legacy.
For all of Harry Kane's brilliance, the shadow of disappointment loomed large over his career at Tottenham Hotspur. His peak years coincided with Spurs' best chance in decades to break their trophy drought, yet time and again, silverware slipped through their fingers. The most painful of these near misses came in 2019, when Tottenham reached the Champions League final. Kane, rushing back from an ankle injury, started the match against Liverpool in Madrid. It was supposed to be his crowning moment, the night he delivered European glory to the club he had carried for so long. Instead, he looked off the pace, Spurs faltered, and Liverpool won 2-0. The image of Kane trudging off the pitch captured the cruel paradox of his career, the world-class striker trapped in a team that could never quite take the final step. Domestically, the story was similar. Spurs came close in the League Cup, in the Premier League title race under Mauricio Pochettino, even under Jose Mourinho's pragmatic rebuild, but they always fell short.
Kane kept scoring, kept leading, but trophies remained elusive. For a player of his stature, the absence of medals was not just a footnote, it was a glaring hole. Frustration inevitably grew. By 2021, Kane made clear his desire to leave Spurs in pursuit of silverware. Manchester City came calling, and for weeks headlines screamed of a potential record-breaking transfer. But Daniel Levy, Tottenham's hard-nosed chairman, refused to sell. Kane stayed, but the seeds of restlessness had been sown. Even as he continued to score, the narrative began to shift. Was Kane destined to be remembered as the Premier League's greatest striker never to win a title? Meanwhile, injuries chipped away at him. Ankle and hamstring problems forced him to miss crucial stretches of seasons, testing both his resilience and his reputation. Yet each time, he returned sharper, hungrier, as if determined to prove that even his body could not betray his pursuit of greatness. Finally, in 2023, after years of speculation, Kane made the decision that defined the next chapter of his story. He left Spurs, his boyhood club, his home, the stage of all his triumphs and heartbreaks, to join Bayern Munich. For the first time in his career, Kane prioritized trophies over loyalty. To some, it was a betrayal. To others, it was liberation. In Germany, he wasted no time. Goals flowed as naturally as they had in England, but the symbolism was greater than the statistics. Kane had broken free from the shackles of Spurs' futility. Yet even as he lifted trophies abroad, the question lingered. Would leaving England mean leaving behind the chance to become the Premier League's all-time top scorer? Would his story be that of a king without a crown, or of a legend who finally claimed glory but at the cost of his throne? Kane's shift to Bayern was not just a transfer, it was a statement. It marked the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. But his legacy in England would forever be tied to the years he stayed, the goals he scored, and the titles that never came.
Harry Kane's story is one of triumph and tragedy woven together. On the one hand, he stands among the greatest strikers England has ever produced. Golden Boot winner, England's record scorer, Tottenham's all-time leading marksman, and a player whose consistency rivaled Alan Shearer's immortality. On the other hand, his years at Spurs remain defined by absence. The missing medals, the empty cabinet, the unanswered question of what might have been had he chosen a different path earlier. Yet legacy is not always measured in trophies. For Spurs supporters, Kane is more than a goal scorer. He is the embodiment of identity, loyalty, and belief. His raised fists after a North London derby goal, his relentless pursuit of excellence, and his devotion to the club he grew up with. These memories cannot be replaced by medals. For England, he has been the dependable captain, the man who carried a nation to its first major final since 1966. Kane's decision to leave for Bayern in search of trophies will shape how future generations judge him. But whether crowned or crownless, he will always represent a paradox. A striker who proved that greatness does not always need silverware to be remembered. His legacy lies not just in the goals, but in the story. A story of loyalty, resilience, and the pursuit of glory against all odds. Harry Kane's journey reminds us of a truth that defines football itself. Greatness is not always written in medals, but in memories. From Arsenal's reject to Tottenham's talisman, from England's captain to Bayern's newest star, Kane's story is proof that loyalty and sacrifice can be as powerful as silverware. If you enjoyed this untold story, make sure to subscribe to EPL Legacy Stories for more deep dives into the legends who shaped the Premier League. And stay tuned, because next, we'll uncover the story of another record-breaking striker whose shadow still looms over Kane, Alan Shearer, the one man who sits above him in the all-time scoring charts. Great talent wins games, great stories win hearts.